So last time I checked, the the YouTube video had 3 views and there's more than 3 people missing. So I'm going to assume everyone didn't watch it.
No, I watched it. I watched it.
We have one from, I think one's from me, so one from Maisha. So one more person, one mystery person watched it. So I'll give a recap. Of what we learned.
Sure.
There's a very well-known concept called Muktza on Shabbos, right? You want to touch something on Shabbos, someone tell you it's Muktza. Now, what does Muktza mean? So if just the context is usually used, Muktza means anything that can't be handled on Shabbos. But this chapter is going to teach us that it's not nearly so simple. There are many different categories of items that cannot be handled on Shabbos. And each one has its own set of halachas. So when there's no one blanket rule on, Muktza, you can't touch this on Shabbos. Not how it works. And we started with some of the categories. Went through 3 of the categories so far. Category 1 is what is actually called Muktza. We borrow Muktza as a wide term. But what Muktza actually means, if you're looking at a dictionary, a Talmudical dictionary, Muktza means set aside. That's what the translation means, set aside. It means it's a category of items which are not really, you don't expect to use them on Shabbos. Right? Either because the classic example that Kizer gives, one of the examples is raw meat. Raw meat, you can't use it on Shabbos. There is no way you can use it on Shabbos without violating Shabbos. So when you see on Friday afternoon you have frozen meat, raw frozen meat in your freezer, in the fridge, you automatically Muktza, you set it aside. I'm not going to use this on Shabbos. Once it's set aside, you can't handle it either. So as we said in last class, if you open your freezer on Shabbos, your fridge, and a raw steak falls out, you cannot move that on Shabbos. Because it's Muktza. That's number 1. And we said if it has some sort of use, the difference is if it has absolutely no use on Shabbos, then you can't handle it. If it has some sort of use, even if it's not the classic use, you could handle it on Shabbos. We went into the details of that in halacha number 1. And then we went into a lot of different categories of that. Something which is forbidden to eat, something which is not fit for use for halachic reasons, for practical reasons. This first 3 halachas discusses that. Halacha number 4 goes into the second category of Muktza. Noilad. Noilad literally, the literal translation means something which was born. Something which was born, something which came into existence today. It did not exist yesterday, and today it exists. Example the Kitzur brings is if your non-Jewish neighbor lights up his fireplace on Shabbos, and after the fireplace burns out, you have ashes there. Those ashes did not exist yesterday. They exist now. Since it falls under this category of noilad, of new existence, it cannot be handled. Now, if it existed yesterday, but the only way to make it accessible was through violating Shabbos, it also falls into this category. What does that mean? If you had an apple tree, and your apples, when Shabbos began, your apples were still connected to the tree. And Shabbos morning, they fell off, or a non-Jewish person picked them. So they existed yesterday. Your apple existed, but your apple was not accessible yesterday. When Shabbos began, your apple was not accessible. Now it's accessible. It obtained a new status. That is also noilad, and it's forbidden to handle. So if your non-Jewish neighbor brings you a gift of apples, because I brought you fresh apples from my tree, my backyard, I just picked them 5 minutes ago. Not only can you not eat them till after Shabbos, you can't even touch them. You can't handle them. All right, now those 2 categories, we didn't say any loopholes, right? We didn't say sometimes you could handle them. We didn't say if the steak is expensive, it falls out, you can handle it. They're forbidden to be handled, period. Now we enter the third category. The third category, start making distinctions. The third category is something which is generally, its main purpose is for forbidden action. A pen, a hammer, a screwdriver, a spade, a shovel. What you're generally using those things for are forbidden actions, to write, to build, to dig. But they have side uses, right? You could use a hammer to break open nuts. So if you want to use that hammer to break open a nut as a nutcracker, that's fine. If you're using it for a permitted use, it is fine. Also, if the hammer is sitting on your dining room chair and you need to sit there, you could also move it. When can you not move it? You can't move it if your hammer is sitting on your dining room table, on your back porch, and you're worried that it might get ruined from the heat, or it might get stolen. So you have no actual use for the hammer right now. You're trying to protect it. In that scenario, it cannot be handled. Right? So category now, number 1 is Muktza. Category number 2 is Noilad. It can't be handled, period. Category number 3 could be handled if it's the terms are L'tzarech Gufay and L'tzarech Mekoymay. If it's necessary to use it for some permitted purpose, or the space that it's on is needed. All right, now we move on to the next category. So we're up to halacha number 6, chapter 88, halacha number 6, which is another category of muktzah. Muktza machmas chesron kis, an object which is muktzah to set aside because of monetary loss. What does that mean? The hainu. This would include, it would mean items which you set aside in you mentally set aside. I'm not going to use this on Shabbos. Why? Because you're worried that if you use them, they might become ruined. Going, for example, kli umanus, a craftsman tool. If you are a silversmith, right? Moshe you see when Moshe comes on in his basement, I don't know, you have science tubes back there? You do? Would you ever use a test tube to drink water out of? Forget the bacteria and all that. You wouldn't. These are expensive items. You're not going to go use them for other purposes. A silversmith is never going to use his hammer to crack nuts, right? It's expensive. You have a sofer, a scribe. He has a special knife to make the feathers sharp. It's an expensive knife. You don't just use it to cut your cheese. Or a knife that you use to slaughter animals for shechting. Again, it has to be exactly sharp. You're using it only to shecht the animals. They keep on sharpening it and checking it. Or paper, which is set aside to write on. Now paper doesn't cost anything. Time of the Kitzer and time of the Talmud, paper to write on was, you had a few pieces of paper, you saved them to write that document on. You didn't just use it. Or if you have a loan document, or other financial documents. So nowadays, financial, you get everything by email, right? Let's say you still get your mortgage papers, your paycheck. It's a good example. A paycheck, it comes to the mail. You're making sure your child isn't scribbling on that. You want that paycheck. Or another example, it gives a letter, which you're very specific to make sure to keep it safe. Let's say someone got a letter from the grandfather passed away, and he's very particular about, he wants to keep this letter. All right? All these examples of things that are because of, you don't want them to get ruined, you're going to be very, very careful with them. Right? Or very expensive utensils that you don't use, you never use them. You have antique collector, doesn't use the utensils, doesn't use them. Right? They're there for show or for collection. V'chein kol davar, any example. Shemachma shemakbila, because you're so worried about it, you're careful with it. You set it aside, you have a place for it, you don't actually use it. If you have a store, you have utensils there that you sell them. Clay suda, even if it's forks and knives, but you're not going to use them. You want to sell them. Unless some people, even if they have a store, they'll lend the items out and go and sell them afterwards. We won't talk about the business, the customs of the business of these people, but some people do that. Then for him, he's not so worried about it. But a regular person, he has it in the store, he ain't touching it. But if he sometimes lends them out, then they're not really set aside. He does use them when necessary. So call all these examples, any example you think of an item which he's very, very careful about. He's not going to use it. He's only going to use it for its specific use or for nothing at all. Very practical example, a wallet. You're not letting a kid play with your wallet, and you're not using your wallet. Sometimes you'll use your shirt sleeve to grab a hot pot of pasta. You ain't using your wallet for that. Not using your wallet to hold up your plate or anything. No, you're not using your wallet for anything besides for you're putting your wallet away and making sure it stays safe. So have a Muktza, machmas, chesron, and kiss. All of these would be muktza. They'll be forbidden to handle because they're called Muktza, machmas, chesron, and kiss. They're Muktza because of monetary loss. Vasur and betulton, you cannot handle them. Even if you're going to use them or you want the space they occupy, which the last category, this would be fine. Over here, it's not fine. So Shmuel, we're holding chapter 88. We just finished Halacha 6. To summarize, any item which you're not going to use, either you're going to only use it for a specific purpose because of it's so you don't want it to get ruined, or you won't use it at all, just for display or whatever it is, that cannot be handled on Shabbos period. Again, there's a lot of practical examples. A laptop, if you have a camera, Yehuda, all your instruments. You're not going to use it as a booster seat. You're only going to use it to play music on. All of Moshe Gutman's scientific experiments over there, all the goylams you make in the basement, you can't handle those on Shabbos. A paycheck, we said, a wallet. You have antiques. You have whatever, all these type of things. Fine bone china, maybe if you don't use it. All these things are considered. You set them aside mentally. You're not going to use it, so you can't use it on Shabbos. Even if you decide you want to. Yehuda, you decide you want to use a guitar to smash nuts with it, you still can't use it. Or if you're more practically, if your guitar is sitting on your chair, so if it was a hammer, a regular hammer, you can move that. You go put it away, and once you pick it up, you can put it away wherever you want. Your guitar is not sitting on your chair. Sorry, this chair is off limits for Shabbos. All right, that is the next category. So far we're holding 4 categories. I'll give you a pop quiz after all the categories. Halacha number 7. Davar she'ein alav shem kli klal. Certain objects are not considered a vessel at all. Everything until now talking about a vessel or item of food. Something which is not a utensil, not a vessel, not a utensil in any way, shape, or form. We got eitzim, ravanim, wood. There's pieces of wood. Stones, chatichas barzel, or chunks of metal, v'chadayma. Talking about refined pieces of metal bars, just pieces of metal. Aser gam came b'chol tilta, cannot be handled in any way. Afilu tzarech gufa tzarech mekoyme, even if you're taking that rock to smash nuts, or using the wood for something, you can't have it handled on Shabbos. Or even if the wood or stone is sitting on your chair. If your child brings in a stone from outside and puts it on your chair, that chair is now off limits. You can't move that stone. Unless Before Shabbos came, you went outside, took a rock, and said, "This rock is now my official nutcracker." Then it became, you made it into your utensil, into your vessel. So you can't go around on Shabbos, you can't pick up plants, you can't pick up wood, chips of wood, even in your backyard, no problem carrying. You can't pick up pebbles, you can't pick up twigs, leaves. They're all forbidden to be handled on Shabbos. Also, little case and therefore, if you go outside, you have something stuck in your teeth, your backyard, it's no problem carrying it. But you go into your backyard and you see a wood splinter on the floor. You can't take that on Shabbos. You can't handle it on Shabbos, even if you're going to use it as a toothpick. But so you have a use for it. But bottom line, it's not a utensil. You have to do that before, unless you take it before Shabbos and this is my toothpick. If you have broken candles, Gamkein ein shem kli also not considered vessels. Basur b'chol tilta cannot be handled because they even though they were at one point, they were something useful. They were candles. Right now, they have no use. V'chein sulam shaliyah ein alav teres keli. Also, a ladder used for an attic is not considered a vessel. This is talking about these attics that were used very infrequently. It's not considered a utensil. All right. So far, we're holding that number 4, number 5. We have Muktza, which is the actual Muktza category. We have Klisha Malachta Isur, Noilad, Klisha Muktza Machmen Chesar and Kiss, and something that's not a vessel. 5 categories so far. Halacha number 8. Klisha Malachta Leheter. A utensil which is made for permitted usage. Most things you use on Shabbos, a plate, a bowl, a fork, a spoon. Well, anything you use on Shabbos is a kli shemlach leheter, implement used as made for permitted usage. Even if it's made for both permitted and forbidden usage. How is that going to there is a pot, a cooking pot, right? A cooking pot is made for 2 things. Number 1, to cook in it. Number 2, to store the food. That's one forbidden activity and one permitted activity. Still, even if they're disgusting, you haven't washed a pot in a week. Because on Shabbos, something which is disgusting is allowed to be handled. Even something like a chamber pot is allowed to be handled on Shabbos. So if a utensil which is either used, which is set aside for a permitted thing or permitted and forbidden thing together, mutter betaltlam, you're allowed to handle them. Afilu rak b'shvil hakli shelo yiganav ayeshover, even if you're not actually using the utensil, you're just protecting the utensil. You're moving the utensil for the sake of the utensil. It won't get broken. You don't want, if you leave your plate on your table, your glass cup, your child might break it, or it might get stolen. So you're moving it for the utensil, not for any actual use. That is fine. Now we're going to learn something which I'd say the vast majority of people don't know. If you are moving that cup or that plate for absolutely no reason, also a taltlam is forbidden to handle them. So we just drop the bombshell. Kids just drop the bombshell. There is a scenario where you're not allowed to handle your fork and knife and cup and plate on Shabbos. If you're moving it for absolutely no reason, not because you're using them, not because you're protecting them, not because your child might drag off the table, you're just moving it for no reason, that is forbidden on Shabbos. It's a big one. Now the more lenient category is holy writings or food. Mutla taltlam, you're allowed to handle them even for no purpose at all. So even within permitted items, there are subcategories. Right? Your sfarm and your forks and spoons all ought to be handled on Shabbos, right? No, depends. They go into subcategories. The forks and spoons do have a certain area which would be forbidden to handle them, and your books, your holy books, and your food will be handled no matter what. All right. That is all the categories. Now we move on to some halachas of muktzah, some more halachas of muktzah. Halacha 9. Kashem she'asul l'taltos on muktzah, just like it's forbidden to handle muktzah, oy es ha'noilad, or the muktzah is the first category, right? Then it's going to be a bit confusing here because muktzah is a general concept. People use the word muktzah to cover this whole. People use muktzah to cover over this whole, this whole blank, this whole category. But really, muktzah is one category within this discussion. All right, muktzah is the first category, which can't be used on Shabbos for whatever reason. So now, when we use the word muktzah, I'm going to try to specify which one is it: the general description or is it specific category? So halacha number 9. The same also taltos on muktzah is a noila, just like the first two categories we discussed. Of muktzah, something which is set aside, you don't plan to use it on Shabbos, or noila, something which came into existence on Shabbos. We said you can't handle them under the circumstances. Same way, same thing. You're not allowed to put a utensil under them in order for them to drip into it. Some reason they're dripping. Let's say you have your steak. You left it on your raw meat. Left it on the table. Your child put your raw meat on the table. Now it's dripping. You want to put something under it so to catch the drips. Your table wants to smell like defrosted meat. You can't do that. Why? Because by doing that, that bowl that you put, which is catching the drops, cannot be handled on Shabbos. Before it was a bowl, you're allowed to use a bowl on Shabbos. Now it's a utensil for the muktza. You made the utensil not be allowed to be handled. It's as if you took that bowl and glued it and cemented it to its place. So you put it in a place, now you can't handle it anymore. And that's forbidden. If you have chickens in your backyard and they're trying to go up to the coop and the step broke, whatever, you're allowed to take a basket and turn it over and make it into a step for the chicks. Because, for the second the chicken is on it, you won't be able to move the basket. But the chicken will go into the coop or out of the coop, and then you can move it again. When it comes to the meat drips, the liquid, that's it. You can't move this utensil until Shabbos is over. The chickens are moving, so once you're not nullifying that utensil. However, if the chickens, when Shabbos, you put the basket there, not on Shabbos, but on Friday. You put it on Friday, you put the chicken there, you put the basket there. And when Shabbos came in, that period of time when Shabbos comes in, the chickens were on the basket. The basket is forbidden to be handled the entire day. And another rule by Muktza, something which was Muktza when Shabbos began, stays Muktza until the end of Shabbos. Even if something changes. I'll give you an example. If your candlestick, you have a candlestick, right? When Shabbos came, the candle's lit, obviously. Shabbos morning, the candlestick there's nothing there anymore. Could you move that candlestick? No, because when Shabbos began, it was Muktza. It stays Muktza the entire Shabbos. So that basket, if when Shabbos came, there was nothing on it, then it's fine, you can handle it. If when Shabbos came, there was a chicken sitting on the basket, so it was Muktza those 5 minutes, and messes up the basket for the entire 24 hours. I think I'm going to stop a few minutes early to let you go dance a little bit. And Mirza Hashem, let's see the schedule. It's Thursday.
Is that why you put challah on your Shabbos table before lighting the candles, so that the table doesn't become muktzah?
A very good point, Alan. Yes, it's important if when Shabbos begins, you only have candles on your table is Muktza, because it's a base to the candles. If you have chalas and candles there, then it's a base to one forbidden thing and one permitted thing. That's why it's important when Shabbos comes to have the chalas there, or else the table's Muktza with tablecloth and everything on it, everything, all the layer of the tablecloth. All right, the next Tuesday is Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres. This is a nice Simchas Torah, and so we will resume, God willing, on the 30th, a week from now. From then on, it should be regular. All right, have a good Yom Tov, have a good Moed, a good Shabbos, a good Yom Tov, and see you all in a week.
And what he
Hello,
said.
everybody.